I think we can start the session now. Good morning to one and all. A warm welcome to the fourth session of DBSH monthly faculty seminar. As you know, the general purpose of these seminars is the sharing of ideas across disciplines and encourage new discussions. Today's session will be handled by Dr. Silvy Mathew, Student Welfare Officer, RSET. Dr. Silvy Mathew secured her master's in social work with specialization in medical and psychiatric social work from the Rajagiri College of Social Sciences, Kalamasheri. Subsequently, she completed the prestigious 2-year MPhil program in psychiatric social work from the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIMHANS, Deemed University, Bangalore. She has been trained in adult psychiatry, child and adolescent psychiatry, family psychiatry, community psychiatry, neuropsychiatric rehabilitation, de-addiction she got involved in training postgraduate students of social work in the Rajagiri College of Social Sciences, Kalamasheri, on a part-time basis. She joined Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology, Kakanad, in 2008 and has been as a counselor. She has also served as a de-addiction counselor at the Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of the Alcoholics and Drug Addicts, TRADA, as a family counselor in the Family Counseling Center at Edakkunnu, Karukutti, and as the coordinator of the Child Guidance Clinic associated with PJ's Neuro Center, Ernakulam. She has also conducted many training sessions for teachers and parents on issues related to children and adolescents. So before we begin the session, let me remind you the instructions. Kindly turn off your cameras and mute your microphones. If time permits, there will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. You can clarify your doubts during that time. The link to the feedback form will be shared towards the end of the session. Please provide your valuable comments and suggestions. Now I invite Silvy Miss for the presentation.
Am I audible, Deepti? Am I audible?
Yes, Miss. Yes.
Okay, a very good morning, everyone. Okay, I know there are lots of activities taking place in Rajagiri parallelly with the admission process going on. So we will try to keep this presentation minimal as possible. Even I have to go somewhere soon after this program. So I'll try to keep it minimal and try to wind up by 11. Okay, so okay, let me begin my presentation. Okay, can you see?
Yes, Miss.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Deepti. So, and thank you, Deepti, for that generous, very generous introduction that you've given. Thank you so very much. And yeah, to sync with the topic of our presentation, even I am wearing red today because, you know, what do you mean by losing temper? You see red, right? So to sync with the topic, I am wearing red dress today, if you can see me. All right. So we'll begin with what is the mechanism of anger. In order to understand the mechanism of anger, we should first understand how anger evolved or what was the purpose of anger. Okay. So anger evolved as a biological response to certain challenges. When you think about the evolution of human beings lived in very harsh situations in the earlier days, right? He probably lived in a jungle or mountains or very hard terrains over which human beings had no control. Okay, so there were many biological challenges or threats to his life that he had to encounter on a daily basis, like natural calamities at times, wild animals, and other men's gangs. Like everybody was, fighting for survival, and the fittest only survived in those days. So there were a lot of aggression which was taking place, and only the fittest could survive. So what are the kind of responses or the reactions that human beings showed when there were these kind of challenges is important in understanding anger, right? When faced with a danger or a threat to one's life, the first response was either flight, second one fight, or freeze. So these were the kind of three choices that was available to a human being when he was threatened with death, something very, very grave. Okay, when okay, let me give you an example. If we are encountered by a snake, let's say it's a very poisonous snake, a cobra. When we see it, what is our first response? Okay, the first response is fear. Oh my God, this snake is going to bite me and I'm going to die. So out of fear, you run for your life, isn't it? So that is what is meant by flight response. Or if you are brave enough, and you're not that afraid, you will look for a stick somewhere around and try to kill the snake. That is the fight experience. And some people are like, when faced with a threatening situation, they kind of freeze. They don't know what to do. Okay, they turn completely helpless or sad. Okay. So this is what is meant by a freeze. You freeze and you cannot move, or sometimes you faint and you cannot respond in any manner possible. So when we translate these alternative responses, we can get a response of fear, which causes flight, a response of anger, which causes fight, and a response of sadness or helplessness, which causes a frozen state. Okay, so anger, fear, and sadness actually evolved for survival of man. Without anger, he couldn't survive. If he wanted to fight with other men, or if it wanted to chase an animal, if it wanted food, the man wanted food to hunt down an animal, it, the man wanted anger. What happens when you're angry? You get a lot of energy. So this anger helped him in surviving in tough times. So this is how the emotion of anger evolved, or the emotion of fear and helplessness evolved. So these three emotions are called as the basic emotions of human beings. Okay. And in these kind of situations, when you're faced with a biological challenge, your response, what you do, the right response will decide whether you're going to live or die. So this was very, very important. Now let's take a look at the physiology of how this fight or flight response is triggered in man. Okay, when you see, let's take the same example. When you see a snake, see, you see something, and through the optic nerves, the signals or the impulses go to a center called thalamus. Thalamus is a center deep down in the brain, below the cerebral cortex. So thalamus is like a relay station. Okay, it relays signals to different parts of the brain to take the appropriate action. So from the thalamus, the signals normally are relayed to, because it's a visual stimulus that we have received, the picture. Seeing a cobra is a visual stimulus. Thalamus sends it normally to the visual cortex. Visual cortex is located at the back of your brain in the occipital lobe. Okay, from the visual cortex, the brain understands that this is a cobra, and understanding that it gets an image. Actually, what visual cortex does is it just creates an image of a cobra, and from there the impulses will go to a center known as amygdala. Amygdala is the emotional center of the brain. This is a kitchen where all kind of emotions are brewed. This is what we need to understand. So amygdala is the main culprit, or I wouldn't like to call it a culprit because amygdala helps us in surviving in tough situations. So amygdala is the place where all our emotions are brewed. So what happens when the impulses reaches amygdala? Amygdala says, okay, this is a threatening, dangerous situation. If I don't run from here, the cobra is going to bite me. Or if I don't kill the cobra, it is going to kill me. So either a fight or a flight response is triggered, anger or fear is triggered, and depending upon what is suitable, the human being acts on it. If he is angry, then it kills the cobra. So this is how the emotion of anger is triggered usually. But what is funny here is that visual cortex sends signals not just to amygdala; it sends signal to the prefrontal cortex. You see the anterior part of our brain, that is towards our forehead. Forehead area is the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex is the decision making, the rational, logical center of your brain. So this logical center of the brain is actually involved in taking decision in most of the situations that evokes anger or any kind of emotion for that matter. But if you want to survive when faced with a cobra, you cannot afford to let the frontal cortex take decisions. It will take at least, let's say, 1 or 2 seconds to make up a decision. Okay, it says, okay, there is a cobra. What do I do? So it takes 1 or 2 seconds for the frontal lobe to take a decision. So in that time, probably the snake is going to bite you. So what the body has devised is this mechanism of a bypass between thalamus and amygdala. So thalamus has a mechanism by which it sends the signals straight to amygdala. This is a mechanism to protect human beings. So amygdala flares up. Okay, there is a threat, there is a danger. In a fraction of a second, amygdala flares up and it takes the appropriate action of either fighting or fleeing from the situation. So remember, emotions are good and it is for our survival. Okay, it's like amygdala is like a grandmother who is trying to protect a child. Okay, but amygdala cannot differentiate whether this is a life-threatening situation or a situation that is in that life-threatening. So the decision-making part of amygdala is poor, whereas the protective part of amygdala is something that is worth, praising. Okay, this is again the same thing in detail. The visual impulses goes to the thalamus, the release station. It goes to the occipital lobe, visual cortex over here. From there, it goes to amygdala, and visual impulses go to the cerebral cortex out here in the front as well. Okay. Okay. Now, this is a very interesting concept which a famous psychiatrist by the name of Dan Siegel has come up with. Okay, this is for the layman to understand how the brain functions. Okay, he says that there is an upstairs brain and a downstairs brain. The upstairs brain is the brain which thinks, the thinking brain, whereas the downstairs brain is the emotional brain. Okay, if you analyze the evolution of human brain, you can see that there was a reptilian brain at one point of time which just reacted. Survival was its only motive. Then there emerged a primate brain or a mammalian brain, and then evolved the human brain. So if you can see my fist, okay, a brain is like this. This is the brain stem, and this is the cerebral cortex. That is the latest, the most advanced brain. And this inner part is the downstairs brain. This is the upstairs brain, and this is the downstairs brain. Okay, downstairs brain is what we see in animals, and upstairs brain is a specialty of human beings. So upstairs brain helps us in dealing with the higher, the more refined and the more civilized emotions of human beings, whereas the downstairs brain is just fight or flight kind of a response. Survival is its only motive. Okay, so we are talking about a concept known as amygdala hijack. Okay, this is a concept which was introduced by Daniel Coleman, a psychologist, and he's the one who introduced the topic of emotional intelligence in 1996. Okay, he says that when faced with a threatening situation, amygdala hijacks the entire brain. In the previous slide, we saw in the picture, we saw that from the visual cortex, signals are sent to both amygdala as well as the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain. But when faced with a life-threatening situation, according to amygdala, what happens is amygdala takes charge of the entire brain. It sees, it could be not a life-threatening situation. Like I said earlier, that amygdala is an organ which cannot differentiate what is life-threatening situation and what is not a life-threatening situation. So it sees every situation which triggers anger as a life-threatening situation. So in life-threatening situation, what amygdala does is it it cuts off all other kind of signaling to other parts of the brain, and amygdala takes charge and it starts flaring up, which means the signals don't reach the prefrontal cortex, which is supposed to take the rational decision and act accordingly in a situation. So amygdala hijacks the entire brain when it feels that, okay, I am under threat. So we cannot make any rational decisions. That is why we flare up, and later on, maybe after 5 minutes, we sit and wonder, why did I flare up? Why did I shout? Why did I yell? Why did I throw that thing? This is what happens. Emotion takes over the logical brain. This is what happens. Okay? All right. Now, let's see what are the kind of emotions that provoke anger in a civilized society? We saw the uncivilized society, and what was the kind of anger provoking situation? It was threat to life that provoked anger earlier. But are we met with such life threatening situations in today's world? In the civilized society, we aren't facing these kind of life threatening situations, but probably occasionally. But most of the situations which make us angry and react the same way that man reacted in the primitive ages is, when you think, is pretty much silly. We'll take some examples. Okay, when do you become angry? The boss shouting at you, you become angry. Okay, someone saying mean things to you, the children not listening to you, you being burdened with unfair amount of work by someone, irresponsibility on the part of colleagues, or one's spouse or children, others not doing a perfect job like you have expected, someone teasing or bullying you, or home in a mess when you reach back home from work. This is a situation that I usually face. Employee reporting late to work daily, and mate not showing up a day when you're not feeling well. Okay, so if we take a look at these things, small things, which is not life threatening at all, but still we blow up. Why is it that we are showing the same kind of emotion that primitives showed? That is because of the concept of amygdala hijack. Now you understand why we blow up and regret later on about why did I do that. Okay. And let's take a look at what are the themes of anger in the civilized society as well. We understood that we need not, see red when faced with these kind of small situations, but we still see red. Okay. So what are the underlying themes of anger in the civilized society? First one is when our expectations about others are not met. All of us have certain expectations about what others should do and what the others shouldn't do. So when this is upset, our authority, our power is questioned, and we become angry. Other one is when we feel others are troubling us by expecting too much from us, which is not fair. So this is not as moral anger. You feel that this is not fair. So moral anger can be felt not just for yourself, but for others as well. It is moral anger on the part of Gandhiji, which won us freedom. So anger is good, and this is one type of anger. Okay. Then when we feel stressed or tired, we usually get Why is it that we become angry when we feel stressed or tired? We'll see why. We feel stressed when the demand exceeds our resources. This is economics. Economics. From the economics point of view, this is how one feels stressed. When the demand exceeds our potentials, our resources, we feel stressed. Okay? All right. In short, we feel angry when we feel threatened, or when the homeostasis or the equilibrium of the mind and body and the spirit of the human beings is kind of challenged. So, whenever we become angry, the underlying theme is a kind of a threat. Threat to your position, power, authority, threat to your peace of mind. It is some kind of a threat, whatever is the kind of threat it is. Okay. Now, we saw anger from the point of view of evolution and how anger is important for survival. But it is not just the genetic predisposition which makes us angry, but we learn anger by observation of other people too. This is social learning or observational learning of anger. Okay. Now, for a newborn, if you observe a newborn baby, see that most of the most important, the only single emotion probably it shows is crying. Okay, and eventually it starts observing people around it. And when it sees somebody shouting or somebody showing an angry face, the baby is kind of perplexed and puzzled. And eventually, over a period of a few months, maybe 6 months, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, by 1 year, definitely it makes out. By 10 months, a baby can definitely make out an angry face, anger responses, etc. So it learns. It learns that when you show an anger response, there is a equivalent reaction from the other party. So it learns behavior by observing. So as parents, we have to be aware and beware of how we deal with our anger. Okay, what are the situations in which we usually lose our control? We lose our temper over a traffic jam, rash driving by a motorist, when we burn a dish in kitchen while cooking, when you see your child messing up home, a stupid boss or stupid colleague at work is an everyday affair for people, and such a situation which make them angry. And what are the kind of manifestations of anger that we show? Throwing our hands up in the air in frustration, slamming the doors, throwing things in anger, yelling at other people or abusing others physically and sometimes verbally, cursing, using cuss words, hitting, spanking, etc. A few manifestations of anger. And unfortunately, all these manifestations of anger and the very behavior of showing anger has become so routine and natural that we don't even realize that we are becoming angry. I remember my son asking me, Amma, why are you so rude? Okay, it's only when this fellow posed this question I understood and I realized that, oh my God, I'm being so rude with him. So it's become so natural and routine that we don't realize that we are angry. Even when we become angry, we don't realize that we are angry. So that we have to be careful that kids are there and they are watching us. Okay. And another risk factor of showing this kind of anger is that children, because I said that they are imitative learners. They mimic whatever you show. If you shout and yell at your child when you become angry, they also will learn that behavior and they shout and yell at their peer group when they become angry. If you spank, they also hit their friends. So this is a very, very important area that we have to look into when it comes to controlling our anger. And let's take a look at what anger does to our body. Definitely anger is an emotion which is there to protect us in extremely dangerous situations. But in civilized world, we are not facing those kind of situations that often, maybe once in a year or something like that. But most of the cases, we are facing situations that it doesn't warranty, that doesn't, demand for us to become angry. So when you are subjected to anger almost on a daily basis for 1-2 hours daily, what happens to your body? Okay, anger steals your health. Relationships, definitely. If you blow your top every day, your relationship is definitely going to be affected. It, sometimes you your anger outburst is so bad that you feel bad, you feel ashamed at times. Why did I ever do that? So it does a lot of harm to you. And next one is getting angry more often. This is a very important thing. Is a bigger predictor of early death due to heart diseases than the risk of smoking, unhealthy diet, and lack of exercise put together. So can you believe that? Anger alone kills more people than people who smoke, than people who don't exercise, or people who have junk food. Yale University study found that people with anger management issues have a weaker immune system, which makes you susceptible to corona and stuff like that. Okay, and anger releases fatty acids that gets accumulated in the arteries. Arteries are the vessels in the heart, and eventually that will lead to narrowing of the blood vessels, which is known as atherosclerosis, and resultant risk of stroke and heart attacks. And other studies have also found that these people are susceptible to high blood pressure and definitely coronary heart diseases and type 2 diabetes. That is diabetes that you develop eventually when you become older. Okay. Now, if you look at this, this is so very true. Anger is a vessel that, that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which uh, uh, it is poured. Sorry, it is poured, not stored. Okay, Mark Twain says that it harms the person who is harboring anger more than whom you're venting it out on. There is another one, this is almost an ancient adage, which says that anger is the punishment one gives oneself for the mistakes of others. And it is very true. I just delineated some of the health risks that is involved as an aftermath of anger. So it does more harm to the person showing anger, experiencing anger, than the person whom we are venting out that anger. We shout at somebody, this is an everyday affair or at my home to shout at my son. Sometimes I wonder, why did I ever do that? This fellow is least bothered. So when you realize it, you calm down and you decide that, okay, I'm not going to become angry. So you stick to that decision for a few days. Then again, eventually, the evolutionary mechanism, slowly start creeping up, and you again start becoming angry. So, but when you become aware, you can have better control over your anger. And now let's take a look at what are the anger control techniques. This is what is important for us. Okay. Now, the first one is, I didn't tell you what exactly happens when you become angry. When you become angry or when the amygdala flares up, what happens is amygdala starts releasing a lot of chemicals such as adrenaline, noradrenaline, and corticosteroid. Okay, these are neurotransmitters and hormones and different type of chemicals that helps you to gain energy to either fight or flee from the situation. Okay, so then what happens? Your heart starts beating faster. The blood from the center of the body is pumped to the extremities, to your hands and legs, so that you can run faster, and the breathing becomes faster. So all these mechanism is to give you more energy so that you can either fight or run from the situation. Okay. Now the entire body stiffens when this kind of a soup of chemicals are brewed up. The entire body stiffens and all these other kind of changes takes place. So then when body stiffens, your shoulders raise. So this is one mechanism. You clench your fist, your jaw lines become tight, your entire body kind of becomes very tight and stiff when you become angry. This is a signal. This is a danger sign that you're becoming angry. So if we become consciously aware of how the body responds, you can make out that, oh my God, I'm becoming angry and I need to control this. Like I said, we are not facing life-threatening situations most of the times. So there is no need for us to become angry. So become aware at the very first sign, physical sign of anger, and try to control it. So how do you control it? When the body becomes stiff, become aware that I'm becoming stiff. So what do? Shoulders raise up. So consciously, you drop the shoulder, raise the shoulder and drop the shoulder, so that you are trying to consciously relax your body, try to relax your entire body muscles. The second one is that the chemicals, that is the chemicals that I talk about, all the neurochemicals which is brewed up instantly in the amygdala, are diffused within a span of the first one. Probably the adrenaline is released within 1 or 2 seconds, and the following ones, the noradrenaline and the corticosteroids, all are released in the subsequent 3-4 seconds. So if we become aware of the signs, and we become aware within the span of time that I am becoming angry, and you label that, oh my God, I am angry, the very labeling of that emotion as anger gives you some time, which means amygdala kind of gets confused. Okay, what is happening? I am supposed to act. Instead of that, somebody is saying I am becoming angry. Somebody is labeling my emotion as anger. So then what happens? It buys time for your prefrontal cortex or your frontal region of brain, which is the executive brain, which is the thinking brain, to take charge of the situations. So when you label your emotion, you are buying time for the executive brain to think and act rationally. So tame it to, name it to tame it is a caption that Dr. Dan Siegel has given for this particular phenomena. Okay. And then every time there is an amygdala hijack, review the situation when you calm down. Like in most of the situations, we regret what we have done during an anger outburst, isn't it? So sit down. Every time an anger outburst takes place, sit down and review the situation and try to see what would have been the right kind of response that I should have done at that moment. For example, I can give you a lot of examples from my own side. My son he's a gaming freak. So every time I see this fellow gaming for hours on end, I kind of lose my temper. So what I do, because I know all these mechanisms, what I do, sometimes I lose my control. Sometimes I'm like, okay, come on, this is happening. All right. So I would sit and imagine that, okay, what I should say is, okay, his name is Kunjako. Kunjako, what you need to do is, you played for 4 hours today. Okay, do you think that is right? Okay, so this fellow says, okay, he comes up with all kind of excuses. And sometimes he says, yeah, I know, it's too much time. Okay, then I say, okay, you cannot play anymore. Probably because you have played so much, tomorrow I won't give you this gadget for you to play. Okay, that resolves the issue in a amiable, friendly manner between me and my son. Instead, I can go and shout at him. And if I shout at him, what happens is the restriction between us. This fellow goes and slams the door and he locks himself up in his room. I feel bad, he feel bad, and the tension continues till the evening. And when he's hungry, he comes out, and somehow we try to patch up. Still, the tension, there is tension in the air. So which response is better? This tension-filled response or the other response where you very, you're communicating what you're feeling. I'm feeling angry because you've been playing for so many hours on it. This is not permissible and this is bad for your health. So that message was communicated. He's taken the message well and he's agreed that, okay, I shouldn't be allowed to play tomorrow. So that has resolved the issue wonderfully, whereas this anger response has not addressed any of these things at all. I have not spoken to him that, okay, because you have done this, I am angry, and because you've been playing for so long, your health also will get affected. And none of these things could be communicated when I was angry. So this is why it is extremely important for us to sit down and review the situation. If you lose your temper in a situation, so when you lose temper, sit down and review. in your imagination, you plan what I should have done. So when a similar situation comes next time, you will respond. There is a very high likelihood that you will respond accordingly, like you have planned. Okay, so practice is very, very important. Now, another thing is regular exercise. Studies have found that people who do regular exercise, any kind of exercise, even walking, have been found to have better control over their anger. The last one is meditation. Meditation is a wonderful thing. Um, Even I never used to do meditation, but I'm recently introduced to the concept of meditation, and I'm finding it very useful. To be frank, there are different types of meditation. What meditation does is it kind of help you to become aware of the present moment. There is a technique known as the deep breathing technique. This is a yogic breathing technique which helps you in controlling your negative emotions like anger and anxiety. This is just breathing by closing your right nostril, breathing through your left nostril, because they say that left nostril is connected with the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is what gives you a state of rest, whereas the sympathetic nervous system keeps you in a state of arousal. And the left nostril is connected with the parasympathetic nervous system. So breathing through the left nostril, say about 10 times by closing the the right nostril, will help you in calming down in an excited situation. The next one is meditation. Of different types of meditations are there. If you just Google meditation, you will come up with at least 120 different types of meditation. Okay, and there are very meticulously done scientific studies all over the world. And Richard Davidson and Daniel Goleman have done a meta-analysis of all the studies which have taken place till 2010, 2015, and they found that 99% of the studies have some kind of flaws. But there's 1% of the studies which have met gold standard for a proper experimentally conducted study. When they analyzed this 1% of studies which met all the scientific standards, they found that meditation has wonderful kind of consequences or effects on the health of human beings. And they found that it improves focus, it helps you to stay calmer under stress, and it, even if you are stressed, it helps you to bounce back faster to your homeostasis. Or in other words, you develop better resilience when you do meditation, and it gives better memory, as you can see here, 16% more marks for those people who practice meditation, and it fosters other higher elite human emotions like generosity, kindness, helping someone in need, and caring. All these emotions are very, very important, and nowadays, all the focus, even by mental health professionals, are on these higher, wonderful human values. There was a time when psychology or psychiatry was purely psychological. It came up with wonderful abstract theories. Then there was a time when it became purely biological. It bothered only about the brain and the brain mechanisms. Now, all these disciplines have entered a phase where they are trying to combine both the metaphysical as well as physical, and trying to understand human being as a larger mechanism. Something like, the whole is larger than the sum of the parts. uh, it's the kind of perspectives that people are developing in the recent days, and a lot more and more importance is given to the spiritual, the mental, or the physical aspects of human beings, not just body and mind. The spiritual aspects also is taken very good care of. Okay, in these kind of situations. So this is a particular book which you can probably read. Sorry. This is by Daniel Goleman and Richard Davidson. It is available in Amazon. This Altered Traits. It's a very scientific book which reveals about meditation and what it does to your mind, body, and brain. And with that, I think I'll conclude the session. Thank you very much for the patient listening. I've already crossed the time. It's almost 35 minutes now. Thank you so very much. And if you have any queries, you may please ask me.
Thank you, Miss. So you can ask questions now. Please unmute your microphone and ask questions. Miss, there is one question in the chat box from KS Mathew, sir.
Okay.
Can you give some simple tips to control anger in the class when students keeps on making sound in spite of repeated reminder, and how to control the situation?
So there are certain situations in which you have to control your anger. Students are students, and if they are in a mood to have fun, they will continue to have fun. This is what we've already seen. And as long as there's a saying that you can only change yourself, not others, to be frank. Okay, so only thing that you can do is change your perspective. You change your perspective. What makes you angry? It is some belief system, right? That people should be obedient, students should be obedient, students should listen to me in class. So when do you become angry? You become angry when your authority or position as a teacher is challenged or threatened by the unruly behavior of the students in class, isn't it? So this is what is known as an automatic thought or a schema in terms of psychology. So all human beings have a set of these kind of belief systems that everybody should respect me, everybody should follow the rules and regulations, everybody should behave perfectly in a classroom setup. But this is your belief system. It is not necessary that others should buy what your belief is. So probably when they become unruly, the only thing that you can do to calm yourself is to understand that they are students. Probably they are hungry. Probably they are bored. Probably it's a last hour. So I need to be empathetic and compassionate towards the feelings of the students. I cannot lose control. I cannot lose control, probably. So perspective changing is the only thing that can save you in this situation. Because if you shout at them, this is shouting at them probably might bring about some kind of behavior change temporarily, momentously, but they are not going to change their behavior uh, with long lasting effects. So probably what we need to understand is the mental state of the students and probably say that, okay, I'm going to take class for half an hour, and I know that you are already tired, and it's been a long day, probably it's hot. I understand how tough it is, but if you can listen to me for just another 10-15 minutes, probably I'll give you last 10 minutes free. So these are the kind of methods by which you can control this kind of an unruly crowd in class. Otherwise, if you shout at them, if you lose your temper, they're going to take you for a ride in the next class also. So compassion and empathy for the feelings of the students is very, very important in emotional intelligence. So understanding and getting into their shoes will help you to control your anger in the situation. I think it's already 11:15, and I have to go somewhere. So can we wind up the session? If you have any queries, please post your queries in my mailbox. I shall definitely answer your queries, if you don't mind.
Okay, Miss.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Miss, for such a wonderful session.
Thank you, Deepti. So shall we wind up? Sonia ma'am?
No. Yes, Miss.
Okay, right. Okay, then.
So our next session will be tentatively on 28th of November by Dr. Anthony Varghese, professor in chemistry. So today's session is over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your patient listening. I hope I have answered some of your queries. I know when when a topic like this comes up, you have a lot of queries. I know that. We'll discuss it either in person or you can send me a mail. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you, Ms.